Okay, we've spoken a little bit about the readings, about what the metaphor mean, what the metaphors are in the story, what they mean, what kind of overarching conclusions they may or may not help the reader reach. Now let's talk a little bit about some different types of criticism. One type of criticism leveled against this story is a feminist critique on the story. What kind of person is Jig, and what kind of person is the American? Do we see Jig, initially at least, as a very stereotypical, quiet, and reserved woman who is looking towards her mate to finalize this decision that she has considered in her mind to be settled, that she wants to keep the baby, but is she strong enough to stand up against the American, or to do her own thing, or however you would like to say this, become a fully actualized character, and to simply take the reins and make the decision to keep the baby? Conversely, do we see the American in this similar light, as this kind of overbearing, or somewhat controlling, or domineering figure that seeks to manipulate Jig through conversation, and then in doing so kind of asserts this masculine dominance over the female character Jig? And there are tons of critics on both sides arguing whether or not these kind of stereotypical kind of roles apply here, and if they do, what are the nuances that apply to them? And I think personally, this is me here, I think personally somewhat helpful in this is the idea that we do not know, as the reader, does she keep the baby? Does she have an abortion? This is one question that authors, critical authors, to my knowledge, have never reached a consensus, that there are no real answers to whether or not, after we see them on into the future, do they decide to have the baby and settle down? Do they have the abortion, keep together, so on and so forth, at the different scenarios that can be played out? And I believe that this is very, very helpful in understanding whether or not who Jig is. So if just as a strategy, if you're going to decide to write an essay about this, and you want to write about a feminist perspective from the story, it may be helpful to think that if you can come to a decision on whether or not Jig is actually going to listen to the American and not have the baby, or if she is going to become fully kind of self-actualized, or however you would like to see this, and resistant to him kind of controlling her, or however you would like to think about this, that may help prove one way or another whether how you see this interaction, and from a feminist perspective. Another perspective that might be applied to this is this idea of post-colonial perspective, and it's something that I do a tremendous amount of reading about, and I love this kind of analysis. And is there something to be said for the idea of him being identified as the American, Jig not being identified as a nationality? To my knowledge, I don't know if she has ever been kind of decided if she has a specific nationality. Is there something to be said there for this relationship between this American, as the author puts it, and this person of foreign descent? Is there something to be said there about the way in which societal interactions happen in this way between possibly American society and other societies, and this kind of domineering kind of attitude, or something like that? And this kind of thing is well explored by many authors. Is there another way to look at it? Is there a way to look at it and say, no, that this interaction is more complex, and to see this interaction as kind of simply one way, that he is the American is dominating Jig, that really kind of takes away from this relationship, that this relationship is much more complex, and maybe do a close reading, that I can show you through a couple of key passages that you're oversimplifying this, Kyle Long, that you're oversimplifying this to the class, and that it's really more complex than this. And if we look closer and further into the story, then I can show you. Okay, so those are 3 different strategies. I'm going to post some stuff up on Blackboard about the different critical articles, because I read critical articles for this stuff too. I'm not making these things up. I turn to other professionals and try to help bring you good information. So I'll show you some of the articles I've been looking at, and you can make your own decision. What are these critics right? Who is speaking to me in a voice that I believe is legitimate and authentic? And so these things will be up on Blackboard, and I'm going to be making some other videos talking about the stories from this week. So if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to just email me or do a video response, and I'll try to get right back to you. And any other kind of discussions or other critical material that you've read about the story that you'd like for me to discuss with the class as well, hey, just send me an email or send me a video response, and I'll be really happy. I've taught this story a number of times, and there's so many different ways to go about thinking about this that we could literally fill weeks and weeks and weeks with the different strategies of criticism. So this is just going to be a very small, very limited attempt at getting you kind of primed toward, thinking about this in different ways if you haven't already. Okay, well, I will do another story here and post it up, and I'll see you soon.